Of every $1,000 spent in so-called charity today, it is probable that 950 is unwisely spent. So spent, indeed, as to produce the very evils which it proposes to mitigate or cure. Neil, how are you doing this afternoon?
Pretty good. We are finally doing this episode.
Finally.
After I think we were planning on it in April. And then...
Yeah, we were planning on recording it in April when we were both in Pittsburgh.
Right.
And then we had other activities that interfered with our ability to record a good episode for everyone.
I think we were also in the middle of reading like Atlas and all these other, like a couple other...
I think we were reading Alice at the time too.
Yeah.
As well as something else. So.
Yeah. I just remember we were knee deep in a lot of reading. And we were like, you know what? You want to just push this one?
Push it.
Carnegie's not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. He'll be here.
He'll be here. So so we're going to do this at that time. But this is a pretty cool piece of writing that he had, and it's an essay.
Yeah.
Was it speech or an essay?
I think essay.
Essay.
I actually, you know what? We should have looked it up. I don't know the exact context of
what it was. Well, it was late in his life when he was already wealthy.
It was later in his life, yeah. Because I think that and obviously we're talking about The Gospel of Wealth by Andrew Carnegie. And he wrote this, I suppose, to explain his philosophy on money and wealth.
Yep.
Probably partially because at his point in history, when he was, wealthy and becoming powerful, it was really one of the first eras in history where individuals could amass that kind of wealth without being sovereigns of some type, right? It was really kind of like a new thing.
Yep.
And there was this big question of like, is it okay? And what do we do about it? And how should people who make, that much money like use it?
Well, and I think to set the stage a little bit, one of the coolest things to do is go to Google and search in today's dollars what Carnegie's wealth was, and not just his, but like Rockefeller and
JP Morgan.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you go in, I want to say Carnegie's was like 150 billion, sorry.
It's something like that.
And the crazy thing is like right now we got one guy, Jeff Bezos, who's in that sort of 3-figure billions category, which is incredible, right? It's like, wow, it feels like their income inequality is insane, which, you could argue it is. But comparatively to the 1800s in this era, there were several people in that category of the triple digit billions.
Well, I think Rockefeller in today's dollars is like 350 billion,
something like that. Yeah. And then Mellon also was like in that, he was in the triple digits. Vanderbilt was in the triple digits. Frick, I think, was in like the high double digits.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people.
A lot of money.
Yeah. And that's all the top people. Like the people one level lower were probably also pretty wealthy.
Maybe not. I mean, the thing is, these guys had a lot going for them, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Much looser monopoly laws, right? So they did a lot of shit that just would not be legal today.
Yeah. No, I just meant in the same companies, right? Because Frick never really ran or started, I think, the company. I think he was just Carnegie's like number 2.
Right.
And he just became just as wealthy, almost not just as wealthy, but almost as wealthy as Carnegie.
Yeah, pretty wealthy.
Just for being like the number 2, which you see today as well. I mean, if you're the number 2 person at Amazon, you're probably doing pretty damn well.
Who is the number 2
I have no idea. But
no idea.
Well, number 2 guy at Microsoft, I guess, was Paul Allen.
Paul Allen, he got what, $4 billion or something?
He got a lot. He owns 2 sports teams, so
it's pretty good.
He's doing pretty well.
Yeah, all the Google guys did pretty well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you're in that or like top first like 5 people, you're going to be a billion, and your company is a triple digit billion company. You're going to be pretty well off.
He's doing all right.
Yeah, but it's an interesting thing because what he talks about in this essay or speech, whichever, this type of content.
I think essay.
I think it's an essay. We'll just call it an essay. Yeah. What he talks about is so relevant today still.
Yeah.
So it's not just this historical piece of writing that's like a curiosity. It's just as relevant today and gives you a lot to think about.
Oh. Well, and part of what's interesting about it too is that I think it does go against this idea of super successful business people as bad people.
Yeah.
Right. Because he kind of rails against that too, where he's saying that it's pointless to just hold on to your money, right? You want to be doing things with it.
Right.
And his model, right, I think it's hard because he provides a really good model for how wealthy people should use their money. I guess the only issue with it would be like enforcing it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Expecting everyone to follow it, because Carnegie seems like he had a lot of skin in the game. He actually did the stuff that he talks about.
Exactly. Yeah.
In this essay.
Well, and do you know if he was pushing for enforcing it, or was it more that people should voluntarily do? This is like what you should.
I think it was like a call to arms.
I think it was a call to arms as well. That was the sense that seemed like why he wrote the essay,
right.
Probably.
Kind of like Warren Buffett's giving pledge.
There are probably two reasons. One was that. one was exactly like to convince the other people who were just as rich.
Yeah.
Second one was probably to rehabilitate his public image a little bit.
Probably.
Because I'm sure I haven't read this recently, but I remember when I read a biography about him, he was like very deeply troubled by all the strikes that were going on in his own company. And because he was poor,
right?
Like growing up, he was poor. And so he sort of felt this like connection to poor people. And then he never realized, I think until those strikes, like that some people didn't like him.
Yeah.
They get like, he just didn't realize that. And he might have written this as,
trying to make himself look a little better.
Yeah. Like I'm not just this evil.
Make poor people like him.
Yeah, exactly. Because it probably like, if he deep down identified with those people, it probably was like, wait, what? Like I'm one of you.
Yeah, exactly.
But then he probably realized he's not perceived that way.
Yeah, definitely.
So
he opens up by pointing out that, as he calls it, the problem of his age, and obviously we see it even more so today, is actually, I don't know. Do we see it more so or at the same level? Anyway.
It's similar, but it's probably, it's similar.
Yeah.
It's probably it seems like there was this peak at that time of these so-called robber barons, right? Of people who got massively wealthy by founding like, honestly, transformational companies.
Yeah, sort of the first national corporations.
Yep. And then there's this middle period of like, I don't want to call it stagnation, but it's not stagnation, but it's like administrators, like people who maintained that infrastructure.
Yeah. Everything kind of like stays fair.
Yeah. Like they didn't start GM, right? But they might have like been CEO of GM. Like you're not going to ever be as wealthy. You're not going to be a triple digit billionaire maintaining GM. Right. But then now today we're living in this other transformational era where people have started, very transformational companies like the founders of Google or Amazon or
it's really like the railroads.
That's what I'm saying.
Were theirs, were their like spark, and for us it's probably the internet.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of these two periods of time that are vaguely similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I would say there's a couple key differences though. Like our society does have a bit more of a safety net than there was at that time, because there's was like nothing at that time. There's no Social Security, no Medicare, no food stamps.
Well, and you could also get way richer because there was basically no income tax too.
Yeah, no income tax, no monopoly law, antitrust laws. There was just a whole lot of differences in that era. But I think your point that you were saying when they're similar is that we do have incredible wealth.
Right.
Certain incredibly wealthy individuals in the world today.
Well, and also to go back to the point that he's actually making, which is that even a few hundred years ago, basically everyone was at the same level of wealth.
Yeah.
Right. And especially if you look at hunter-gatherer tribes, right? Even the leader is not really any materially better off than any other member of the tribe.
Yeah.
And if you go back to like feudal societies, there'd be a few people, in the king's court who are super well off, but then everyone else is basically at the same level. There's almost no wealth disparity.
Yeah.
And now with these national corporations becoming things, right? And largely because of you've got the telegram and train now, so you can have these huge companies. You're starting to have these situations where individuals are actually amassing huge amounts of wealth that, the poor cannot. And you're getting this stratification that's really never been seen before. And so his kind of question he's exploring in the essay is, okay, well, what do we do about that?
Exactly.
And he also says, too, that it's not necessarily a bad thing, because he's got this line here where he says, the contrast between the palace of the millionaire and the cottage of the laborer with us today measures the change which has come with civilization. Much better this great irregularity than universal squalor. Without wealth, there can be no maicenas?
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. The good old times were not good old times. Neither master nor servant was as well situated then as today. So he makes this good point, right?
Yep.
Where you can still feel poor, but you're so much better off than you were 100 years ago.
Which I would say is 100% true today as well.
Well, it's also like, you can be poor in America and have a car or a refrigerator, a television, right? Like all of these things that are, they're not necessarily like absolute necessary for us. They are to be a contributing member of society, but
there are people in the world who don't have that and are still alive.
Yeah, it's like poor in America versus poor in like Ghana, right? They're very different things.
Yeah. Well, I think also he's doing a good job here of dispelling so we talked about it in the last episode, but the so-called Garden of Eden concept.
Right. The good old times, like, back in the day.
Yep. He's basically saying like, hey, back in the day, we all had it bad.
Right.
Now, like, some people have it better than others, but we all have it better.
All have it better than what we had before.
You also have sort of an argument against socialism here with the universal squalor thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's better to have the irregularity of income, but at least have some wealth, than we all be the same, but have no wealth.
Right.
Right. That's one way to have us all be the same.
Yeah. Well, because their best example of that, there weren't really any what we would now call socialist societies in the 1800s, but there'd be feudal societies, which are effectively socialist, right? And so that would probably be the closest analogy they would have. And it's like, all right, would you rather have this unfair competition, but where everyone is at least above like a feudal line, right? Or would you rather have that where you're all living in like hovels and subsistence farming, right?
Right.
Probably rather have the inequality.
Right.
Right. And I think, and that's sort of the question today too, because I don't think that any like sane person wants everyone in America to be at the exact same level. Right.
Maybe a few million people who disagree with you.
Okay. They're probably,
I'm just saying.
That's why I threw in the sane, right? I didn't say there aren't any people.
They're probably not listening to the podcast.
Probably not listening
to the podcast.
If they are,
they're like throwing a tantrum right now.
I hope they're very offended right now. But then the question is, right, what is an acceptable amount of inequality?
Yeah.
Right. Which is a hard question.
Yeah. Well, and then it's also the same thing with like monopolies, right? It's like I was having a good conversation with a friend who works at Google and is like not like super high up, but like high enough that like he has some window into the decision making. And the interesting thing is like for Google, like Google is a monopoly in a lot of ways, right? Like they basically own search.
Yeah.
Like if you want to search something, but it's not a monopoly of force. And that's the thing. They're not preventing anybody from starting another search engine.
Right.
Right. So it's this weird line of like, okay, everyone's voluntarily going to Google. Like, it's not like the internet forces you to go to Google. Actually, for the longest time, and still, I bet people who use Internet Explorer at work, I bet the default goes to Bing.
Yeah. Default for Explorer is Bing and default for Safari is Yahoo.
Yeah. So it's definitely not like a forced monopoly of like, oh, all the internet service providers are forcing you to use Google, right? Like,
right.
But at the same time, you know, the antitrust laws are written in such a way that they're for this era, basically the railroad era.
Yeah.
And, you know, people have tried to bring lawsuits against Google for being a monopoly. And he was just saying that's like one thing that you never think of from the outside. But like all these companies, Amazon included, probably are maneuvering to not be viewed as a monopoly.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of moves they make that to us might be like, why did they do that? Or why would they, you know, buy that company or do that thing? He was talking about for like Google Ventures and all the stuff that they get involved in there. They're kind of trying to show like they're not just a search company.
Oh, I
like
see.
Alphabet does all these different things. And if you look at it, like we might own this niche of search, even though it's a triple digit billions niche.
Well, actually, I mean, the search part doesn't really make them any money. The ads.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's the vehicle.
Right.
Through the ads. But yeah, you're right. They don't charge you to search anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then they can make the argument to like the Justice Department that like, look at all these other things we do, because even if those things never make any money, they're doing all these other things.
Yeah. Well, I think the other big challenge with those kinds of monopolies compared to these kinds of monopolies.
Exactly, because these were different, I would say, a little bit.
Well, but what I was going to say is that these are splittable. Right. So you could break up Carnegie Steel into like a West Coast and East Coast steel company.
Yep. Or AT&T broken up into like 7 companies, I think, into like regional telecom companies.
But you can't really break up Google.
Right. Like, what would you do?
Yeah. How would you break up the search stuff? You just like create
mobile, Google Mobile.
Yeah. Google Mobile and Google Web, maybe.
You couldn't even do that, though.
Even that would be hard because it'd have to pull from the same data set. Yep. And so the companies would necessarily have to be merged. And even if you just like cloned the data set or something and all the tech and created 2 companies, one would just naturally end up winning out over the other. It wouldn't be like a regional split.
Right.
Right. So there's not really a good way to break it up.
Yeah. And there's not a good way to break it up. There's, yeah, I don't know how, like, what a government would actually do, but I had heard like a counter theory to the whole, like, oh, Microsoft missed all these waves. A counter theory to that is that they sort of hamstrung themselves because they got involved in a lot of antitrust lawsuits in the 90s.
Yeah. So
one of the theories is that, like, maybe they just like purposely stopped investing in a lot of these new things because they just didn't want to deal with that side of it. And they were like, we have this. We know this money is going to keep coming in, which it has. Like, they make a ridiculous amount of money for how uncool they are from the outside.
Well, enterprise sales, man.
Yeah. I think they're like the 3rd biggest tech company still.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I think it's like by that or market cap. I think they're either 2 or 3.
You go to any of these like big companies and they're all using shitty Dell laptops running Windows.
Yep.
Right?
Well, and it's not even just Windows. It's like Office. And I mean, there's Skype that they now have, like so many big companies use Skype for business now.
Man, all of their products suck. Like Skype sucks. Office sucks.
But I bet they package it. They must package it.
Yeah.
They must be like, okay, well, if you use Windows, then it'll come with
Bing sucks. Explorer sucks. Their phones suck. Their computers suck. Their Windows sucks.
They've been able to do that somehow. Oh, they also own a chunk of Facebook. So that's also helped their valuation a lot.
Oh, that helps.
I think they own like 3% of Facebook or something.
Nice.
It's like a non-minuscule. That's probably like double-digit billions.
Yeah.
Facebook is...
Probably Facebook's worth, what, 150 billion?
No, I think 500 billion.
500 billion.
Like 500 or 600 or something.
Yeah, so 3% would be like 15, 20 billion.
Yeah. I think Microsoft's up there too, like 500-ish billion as well. And Apple is... I think Apple's like... Apple and Amazon, I think, are closing in on $1 trillion.
Yeah, they got to be getting close.
Yeah.
So Jeff Bezos must still own more than 10% of Amazon stock.
Yeah, probably.
It's impressive. I guess he was a solo founder, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
It helps a lot. It does help a lot.
Well, the interesting thing with the antitrust stuff is I wonder how Apple gets around that with the iPhone and their computers.
How big is their market share, though, in computers? I don't think it's actually as high as it seems.
It's not big enough.
Yeah, because all the enterprise stuff is, well, not all, but most of enterprise stuff is not Apple.
I thought part of the problem with Microsoft was antitrust stuff around not allowing other software to be installed on Windows. And that's definitely what Apple does.
Yeah.
Right? So I wonder how they're
getting around that.
Get around that.
Maybe the market share is just not high enough.
Yeah, maybe they still have enough market share for it to be a concern.
Yeah. Although iPhones have a lot. I don't know what the percentages are, but I just feel like iPhones are all over the place.
Well, as global market share, they're super low.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And also, I'm thinking as I said that out loud, I wonder if it's just people of our demographic, even in the US.
It's like all the people we hang out with have iPhones.
Right, but that doesn't mean shit.
But it's like people who live in New York, Boston, SF, DC, LA, and are in like probably the top 5% of income earners. So it's not really a representative sample.
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe the market share is just not high enough for anyone to care.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is.
That makes sense.
Because I remember Windows had like massive market share in the 90s. It was like every computer had Windows.
That was really all there was.
Every office computer had Windows. Yeah.
You'd like occasionally see a Mac and it would be like weird. Yeah. Like, whoa, what is that?
Yeah.
Why is it blue?
Yeah. Remember those iMacs?
Yeah, with the big like bulb things on the back. It's so strange.
I thought they were so cool though at that time compared to like the standard like looking computer. I was like,
ugly computer.
Yo.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
it's like this doesn't look like a corporate thing.
Exactly. It's fun.
It's orange. But yeah, that's a good question. Like you can't really break up Google.
Yeah.
Or Apple for that matter.
Or Apple, it'd be hard unless you split out the computer and phone.
Yeah.
Sections.
See, Facebook is easier to break up.
Yeah, because you could just say
Facebook and Instagram have to be separate companies.
Or WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Right. Or Facebook and Messenger. Or
yeah, like that doesn't seem as hard for someone to split up.
Yeah, it seems a little easier. So what Carnegie's kind of what he goes on to say is that we have this inequality which kind of comes from natural competition, but he's also pointing out that the kind of like the benefits outweigh the costs. So he says the price which society pays for the law of competition, like the price it pays for cheap comforts and luxuries, is also great, but the advantage of this law are also greater still. For it is to this law that we owe our wonderful material development, which brings improved conditions in its train. And I think that's like an important distinction with a lot of this stuff is that it's not necessarily that competition is good, right? But one, it leads to generally better things than no competition, and it's better than the alternative, right? Where it's like, yes, okay, this isn't great, but it's kind of like the best option that we have.
Yeah. Well, the alternative is a top-down approach to
very authoritative
product development,
feudal or socialist economy, which is not desirable.
Yeah, and I think also people miss the side of lower prices for any product means you have more money in your pocket and everybody else has more money in their pocket.
Yeah.
You know, and then that's just, it lets you go spend on other stuff. So it makes society in general richer.
Right. Because
now like you're getting the same product for less money. And the only impetus to do that would be competition. Like, why would you voluntarily lower your prices?
Yeah.
Like, why would you lower your SEO prices?
Exactly. If there were no competition, it's all right, cool. We charge whatever we want.
Well, and that's why I always find that for any company, it's like much easier and more fun when you are either like, you're so good at what you do, which I would say like for Growth Machine, right? You guys have built such a good reputation. You have such a good reputation. So you're able to charge like kind of what you want and people are willing to pay for that because they want to work with you.
Yeah.
But if you were just like an overseas SEO shop that was like spamming people's WordPress sites.
Oh yeah.
Like you would not be able to charge what you charge.
Yeah.
Because you're a commodity at that point.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's like you're kind of able to like, but the only reason you would ever lower your price is if, let's say, a similar type of person, let's say there was a clone of Net, came in and also started Growth Machine 2.0, and then you'd be like, all right, we got to go beat that guy.
Exactly.
And then because your customers would be talking to both, and then you'd have to lower the price.
Yeah.
Which is why everybody, I think like that's the reason like a lot of companies get terrified of Amazon. Amazon is, okay, there's caveat. I'm going to make a disclaimer. They do some shitty, like somewhat underhanded things. Mm-hmm. Let's ignore that for a second. Let's just talk about it in abstract. What they do in abstract is they're just like hyper efficient and they cut out a lot of the bloat. And a lot of industries have a lot of bloat to cut.
Yeah.
And that's why people hate them, because if you're used to bloat, you don't want to cut your prices. No. But your customers want lower prices.
Exactly. And Amazon can come in with a basics line of the thing that you sell.
Yep.
Right. And it knows kind of your margin and what you're charging and all of that, and they can just beat you.
Right.
It's like a few of my friends who run e-commerce businesses, they don't do their warehousing or fulfillment through Amazon.
Yeah.
Like they don't do the FBA stuff because they just don't want Amazon to have that data.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah. I totally believe it.
So it'd be scary, right? Especially if you're doing anything that can be relatively commoditized.
Yeah.
Right. Because you know they will come for you eventually.
And there's so many big companies that are built on commodities.
Yeah.
That's like terrifying for them. I know, so like, obviously, even in just beer, right? There's private label beer, and Costco's in certain states are allowed to sell beer. Okay. So Costco does its own beer. They do a private label beer.
Oh, smart.
So we actually work with a brewery that makes the Costco beer.
Yeah.
So I know the price that what I'm not going to share on here, but let's just say they are able to do for the exact same price that they buy Bud Light for at that Costco. They're able to buy this private label, very similar beer, right? It's like, I think the same amount of alcohol, similar taste. They say it's better. I haven't tasted, this beer, so who knows if it tastes better. It's basically meant to compete with Bud Light. So instead of selling, Bud Light comes in a 24 pack at that Costco. This one comes in a 36 pack.
Wow.
And it's the same exact price.
I believe it.
Because they don't have like the Super Bowl ads, and they don't have all the bloat.
Yeah.
Like there's no marketing budget. It's just the Kirkland, I don't know what they call it.
Kirkland Lager or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kirk Lager.
Yeah. It's like Kirkland Light Lager or something is like what they call it. And
have you had the Kirkland vodka?
No, but I've heard it's good.
It's honestly as good as like Absolute or something for half the price.
Oh, I had a Kirkland Rioja wine, and it was pretty good.
I believe that.
It was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't that cheap. It was like, I think $9 for the bottle. So it's not that cheap, but I think for the price, I was pretty impressed.
Yeah. If you can drink a $9 bottle and enjoy it, you're living right.
Yeah. It was like Costco does a good job with that. And it's the same Amazon Basics model. It's that, hey, we already have all these captive customers. Like, why are we not just doing this ourselves?
Yep.
And then, you cut out the bloat and you can deliver more value. That's why you can do a 36 pack, because guess where that price difference is going? To the Anheuser-Busch's marketing budget.
Super Bowl ads and the brand name.
Yeah.
It's like, have you seen that company Brandless?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a deal gets a lot of stuff from there.
Yeah.
And their products are really good.
Yeah.
And they're super cheap because there's none of the silly brand tax. And to be fair, Brandless is the brand.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. There's still branding, obviously. And it's really nice brand.
They don't do like the same type of marketing though, right? In their products.
I think they do almost no marketing.
Yeah.
I think it's just word of mouth.
Yep.
And their stuff is really good, and everything is $3.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah, which is a pretty cool way of doing it. And I know what some of those products cost to make, and they're still making a lot of money on it.
Still making good money.
Yeah. So no, there's definitely a way to do it. It's just that that differential is going to marketing.
Right.
So if you find it, sort of the magic sauce, I guess, is finding a marketing channel that's either built in, so you're a Costco or an Amazon.
Yeah.
You already have all these people coming there, or you have some other cheaper form of marketing. Whether that's you are an influencer and you can post on Instagram and you're going to instantly get 10,000 people to go to your store because you're Khloe Kardashian or something. And so, there's different ways of doing it, but finding that sort of alternative marketing channel is where that extra margin comes from.
Yeah.
And then you can lower your prices. But that's only caused, again, by competition.
Exactly. You have to have competition like as a starting point for any of that to work.
But I think that's great for the industries too that are getting affected, because the bloated ones that can't compete basically are going to die.
Yeah.
Right. And I think I was actually talking to someone in the publishing industry recently about this, about how like independent bookstores have started. There's actually been a net gain in independent bookstores over the past year.
Why?
Well, they just think all the bad ones died. Like all the bad ones shut down. And then the good ones like Strand or just, some of the ones that have been able to build a loyal following and actually deliver value, they're coming back.
Right.
Well, not coming back. They just never died. And then there's less competition for them.
They absorbed all of the customers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So, and they like do events and other cool things. And that's kind of like, it's almost like the forest fire analogy, right? Like you cut out the dead wood.
You burn away the brush and
Yeah.
then the rest of the trees can do better.
But that's what competition brings, and can be painful if you're one of the things that definitely will be painful if you're one of the things that gets burned.
Yeah, it gets burned.
But in general, for consumers, it's great.
Yeah, exactly. It ends up being a net positive for consumers in the long run.
Which is what the market is for.
That's what the market needs. Yeah. Though we'll talk about some examples next week where that isn't true.
Yes, exactly. I was going to save it. Save some of those.
It's actually, we've got a good kind of like economics theme going on in a few of these episodes.
I found we got like certain buckets that come up.
Yeah, that we'll like dabble in for a little bit.
We got like the mythology bucket.
Yeah.
And then we got the like economics bucket, psychology bucket.
Yeah. It's good. It's a very broad,
Yeah.
broad podcast. Keeps people interested. It keeps them coming back for more.
Exactly. Now we got what? Atlas, Jungle,
this next week.
Which if you're on the Patreon,
then you would
know what we're referring to.
Yeah.
And if you're not, you should
go
go
join the Patreon. Patreon.com/MadeYouThink.
Yep.
Where you get all of our notes from the episodes. You get our bonus audio transcripts. We had a good conversation actually about the publishing industry.
Yeah.
Before this episode started. You also get updates on the upcoming books. That was the other thing.
I thought you were going to make something up like you used to.
I would never make something up.
Except in this case, we're not giving out money.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not giving out money.
You're giving us money, actually.
You're giving out money.
I like this model much better.
All right.
Anyway.
Back to somebody who has a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. So he goes on to say the question is about how do we administer wealth, right? Because he basically takes it as a given that we want competition. We want these businesses to be able to happen because it makes everyone better off. But then he says, what is the proper mode of administering wealth after the laws upon which civilization is founded have thrown it into the hands of the few? And it is of this great question that I believe I offer the true solution. It will be understood that fortunes are here spoken of, not moderate sums saved by many years of effort, the returns on which are required for the comfortable maintenance and education of families. That is not wealth, but only competence, which it should be the aim of all to acquire. So Keanu is saying, like, to be clear here, we're talking about people with just a fuck ton of money. Right. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, like what should they be doing with their excess cash?
Right.
And it's distinctly a problem of when it's thrown into the hands of the few. And that's kind of what he's going to set out to answer the question of in this article. And he kind of goes on and he pulls a Socrates here, right? So he creates sort of like an artificial trichotomy. There are probably other things that could be done, but he decides like, no, these are the only three things that could be done with money.
But it's a rhetorical device.
It is.
It's the way to focus the conversation.
It's a good way to focus the conversation.
Not go on tangents.
Avoid tangents, exactly. He says, there are but three modes in which surplus wealth can be disposed of. It can be left to the families of the descendants, or it can be bequeathed for public purposes, or finally, it can be administered during their lives by its possessors. So you've got these three options.
Yep.
Leave it to your children, give it to the government, use it all yourself.
Use it in whatever means you think are...
Yeah, use it based on your own judgment.
Yeah.
I actually, to be fair, I don't know what other option there is. There's stupid stuff like, oh, you could burn it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, what else could there be? Because...
Yeah.
I mean, there's also hybrids between the two, right?
Yeah, obviously.
So I think the second option, like give it to the government, that's like 100% death tax.
Right.
Effectively. Like when you die, everything goes back to the government, that's one way. But then you could do like 30% death tax and, 70% could be whatever. But then I guess you could still always use it during your lifetime.
Right.
So, but yeah, I don't know what else you would have besides burn it or bury it in
yeah.
hidden treasure.
Convert it to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he goes on from there and he starts exploring each one of the three options. And he starts by basically saying that leaving money to your children is terrible.
Yeah.
That your kids don't learn the meaning of money. They don't learn how to earn it themselves. They get kind of spoiled.
Well, I think it takes to take a second to go into his background. Like he took pride in being self-made.
Yeah.
Right. And like he didn't really have anything growing up. He was an immigrant from Scotland, moved to Pittsburgh, I think right away. Right.
I think I haven't read his biography.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. But anyways, he was very poor growing up. And I think he actually, in later years, of course, some of this is narrative fallacy and stuff, but he viewed that as being like shaping his thought process and partially why he was successful is because he didn't really have anything. So he understood the value of money at a much earlier age than other people might. So he kind of probably, I mean, I'm just from that sense or that paragraph, right? I think he is viewing it as like, okay, if you give money to your kids, you're kind of robbing them of the potential to learn those things for themselves. So it's almost a curse. You know, it's not a favor you're doing to your kids. It's actually, you're hurting them.
Right. And it's probably so easy too for kids to end up just spending away the whole fortune. You know, they don't know how to handle the money.
Yep.
They don't know how to like run the business, any of that.
Well, they always say that for family, like generational wealth, they say, what is it? First generation makes it. Second generation maintains it. Third generation loses it.
Yeah, I believe that.
Because the people would always say that at Este.
Oh, okay.
Because they were into the third generation starting soon. So second did a good job. First did a great job, obviously. And then third one, we'll see how it goes. But
yeah. I don't know, like family business in general seems like a terrible idea.
Seems really, yeah.
Of all the people in the world who could run your business, you think that the one who just happens to be related to you is going to do the best job?
Well, it's monarchy. It's monarchy.
Yeah, it's a modern monarchy.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, and it's probably sort of
it's probably also pyramid building there.
Yeah, exactly. It's pyramid building, denial of death.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'll trust my biological pyramid to maintain my physical pyramid.
Right, exactly. That's probably exactly what's going on with that. Yeah. But it was interesting that he so quickly shut that down, like saying, yeah, that's a terrible idea.
Immediately dispenses with it. And then he gets into the second option where he says, as to the second mode, that of leaving wealth at death for public uses, it may be said that this is only a means for the disposal of wealth, provided a man is content to wait until he is dead before it becomes of much good to the world. So he's basically saying that you're just throwing your money away.
Yeah.
And he obviously does not have a very high opinion of the government's ability to use money, it seems.
Right. Well, especially anybody who believes in like the market system.
Yeah.
It's just an inefficient way. And also, we should have also mentioned this early on, but he was a pretty hardcore Darwinist. Like he was really into evolution.
Yeah.
Even because that was right around the time that theory was sort of coming
out. Right.
And so there is this underlying belief in all of his work and writing that like the people who have amassed the wealth are sort of like survival of the fittest. Like they've gotten there for like a reason.
They're more fit.
They're more fit to decide where the money could go. Just even if you're purely donating it.
Right.
Right. So in his view, that was what it was. It was, it's just like that's one of the like, what's it called? It's like intersections of his interests probably are permeating in this as well. And so government is kind of the antithesis. I'm not even going to try it. It's the opposite of that, right? So
there you go. Synonyms.
Yeah, exactly. Gotta love English.
Yep.
So government's kind of like top down. It's almost like the creationist view of, it's like God told us to do this, right? As opposed to, no, this gene won out because it was best adapted to its environment.
Well, and to be I find
it's seductive, that argument.
Yeah, I find it compelling, and I don't know a good counter argument to it, right? Because I think that to amass a big fortune and to build a big business, you have to have a good idea of how to use money effectively.
Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't require any financial competence to be elected to public office. Right. And so why should you trust a public official with, no particular economic, business, or fiscal skills to, dole out money when you could trust somebody who has like proven that they are an expert in like something at least related to that. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I buy the argument. I think there are gaps, and then that's where government comes in. But it's like, in general, this makes a lot more sense. And then also, you got to say there's other cool things that if it's an individual giving money, like donating money versus government doing it, no one really has the right to tell that individual, you can't donate to this thing. Whereas if the government tried to like put money into a certain thing, there's always people on the other side, regardless of what side it is.
Oh, yeah.
Who are going to make a big fuss about it. And then people, you'll probably do it inefficiently because you'll have to give money to like their other pet cause to make those people quiet.
Right, to balance out.
And then now you're not being as efficient.
Yeah.
Like just imagine if you have like $100 to give out. You can't give all 100 to Nat's cause because now Neil is going to get pissed off. So you're going to have to give like $50 to Nat's cause and $50 to Neil's cause. Whereas if it was just my money, I could just give all $100 to Nat's cause.
Yeah. You can give me $100 if you want. That's fine.
Who cares what Neil says, right? It's like, I'm so yeah, it's like, I mean, sounds vaguely like a dictatorship, but it makes sense if it's...
Well, it's probably more efficient.
Yeah.
I mean, dictatorships are much more efficient than democracies. Right. Because you just have an arbiter, right? It's just like, nope, this is what we're doing.
For reasons discussed on the last podcast, there are advantages to democracy because you conjecture more, you come up with more creative ideas.
Yeah. Although I would argue that there might be more benefit to short-term dictatorships.
How do you decide who the short-term dictator is? Warlords?
Well, I'm saying like democracy until someone's elected.
Oh, I see.
So like 4-year dictatorships.
I see. So once you're in,
you are the decider, and then like fewer checks on that ability, right?
But then you're betting that person will not fuck up the entire thing.
You are. Yeah. But it's also like, it's impossible.
See, no, but that's a it's not a fat tail problem, but that's a problem of like, it's like a Russian roulette problem. It's like, if you're right, that'll be good. But it just takes being wrong once for the whole thing to come down.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to have other things like you couldn't let everyone vote, right? We need like a more Athenian democracy.
You need more of the landowners only? No,
yeah, basically.
Gmail addresses only.
You're still using Hotmail, you don't get a vote.
What is it? iPhones only? No.
Yeah, iPhones only. Well, I saw something. I don't remember where this was. It was an argument about who should be able to vote on what. And it made, like, one of the examples it gave was that old people shouldn't be allowed to vote on Social Security.
Skin in the game problem. They have too much skin in the game.
Yeah, they only have benefit in the game and no costs, right? Whereas young people might not actually want to pay into a Social Security program right anymore.
I mean, the other way to do it is just don't affect the people who are receiving it. Just make it. But then I guess anybody who's close to receiving it is also going to think about that. And
right. You'd have to have like a taper off thing.
Yeah, something like that. Because I have heard, I think Ron Paul proposed that at one point where he said, let young people just basically opt out and then not have to pay in. And then you're basically saying, I'm not going to take any either. And then he was saying that he bets like a significant percentage of young people would do that.
I would absolutely
do that too.
Yeah.
If there is one entity I don't trust with my retirement savings, it is the federal government.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing too, is it's like, if you're relatively entrepreneurial, you can do so much more with that money now than like tossing it in a government fund.
Well, and I think to be fair to him, his proposal was not that you don't have to pay in at all. It was you pay in way less. And then the amount that gets paid in is just purely a tax.
Yeah.
Like it's just a tax. It's basically not hiding the fact that it is a redistributive program.
Right. And at this point it is.
It is.
The fund is like emptied. Right?
Yeah.
So you're paying it in.
It's a Ponzi scheme.
It's going straight.
It's a legal Ponzi scheme.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is only going to get like worse as the rest of the baby boomers like start drawing out of it.
Right. Yeah. So there's although I have heard they're going to do more incentives to get people to just take lump sums instead of, because the issue is that it's also in perpetuity and lifespans are going up. And like if you're like, what was the thing? It's like not that life expectancy is 80. If you're 80 today, it's not like you're expected to die this year. It goes up as you stay alive, right? So that's the other problem is it's like a yearly income guarantee.
Well, and when it was created, life expectancy was like 68.
Right. So the math worked at that time, but then now it's like
80.
Yeah, it's 80. But then as advances happen and people just stay alive longer, like the people who are 80 today and receiving it might still be receiving it in 10 years.
Right.
It's not like they're out of the system this year.
Well, yeah. And for people like your and my generation, life expectancy is probably 90 to 100.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's one of those things too that's like it's hard to predict because of what we had just read in the previous book.
Yeah, exactly.
It might be 200.
Right.
Like for all we know, right? We just have no idea.
Well, and the tricky thing too with life expectancy is that there's like a biological line at about 120.
Yeah.
Right. Like the body isn't designed to get past that.
That's true. Yeah.
So if you're going to get past that, there has to be some sort of genetic re-engineering, stem cell,
or offloading your brain into something.
There's no way to be so healthy that you live to 150. Right. Like there has to be something else.
But there could be.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, what's interesting with that problem is that it's unlikely, to me, I think it's unlikely we'll ever have lifespans of 150.
Oh, in this biological body, basically, or at all?
No. Like, I think that we'll either have lifespans of...
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like 500, or we'll never
get there.
Yeah.
It's like a more binary thing.
Yeah, it's not like a small linear increase because all we've been doing is making ourselves less unhealthy so far, like getting closer to that kind of biological limit.
Yep.
But pushing that forward a little bit doesn't make sense. Right. Because even if we cure cancer and everything, we'd still die around 120.
Right. So it's like you're not going to go further past that just by removing the unhealthy things.
Right. You have to start engineering something that makes you live significantly longer. And if you're able to do that, then I don't see why it would stop at 150, right?
Yeah.
Because you would have to, I guess if you could do some like stem cell-y stuff and telomere reproduction, right, then you could theoretically expand it slowly, right? But I feel like it would fairly quickly get pretty far out.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And also you'd have a thing where it's like, as long as you're young enough when it starts to happen, you could kind of like keep catching the curve. So, let's say the advancement starts when we're 40 and it means you can live 10 years longer.
Right.
And then you're 50 now, it can be like 20 years longer. And so it's like you're back to being 40.
Right. Like in terms of like real or relative age, effectively.
Exactly. So as long as you catch it early enough, then you kind of theoretically become biologically immortal, at least.
Yeah.
Because they would keep getting better at it. So
we'll be on Mars by then.
We'll be on Mars, yeah. We'll be on Mars, they'll be great looking like 300-year-olds.
See you in 200 years now.
Yeah. We'll be on episode like 20,000. Yeah. We ran out of books, guys.
We'll be like,
we finished them all.
We'll be like, this made you think. No, we'll still be doing the same shenanigans.
Same jokes. We'll have Cyborg Pepper with us.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't even know how we got on that tangent.
No, me neither. But something about public uses.
Oh, yeah. Just that I would trust these people, I think, a little more. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just wouldn't trust really like, I can see why he doesn't trust the government with this.
Yeah.
These types of decisions. Because, yeah, it just doesn't seem as efficient as doing it the way that he's pushing for.
Right. And I like the point that Carnegie makes here too, which is that money is better used in lump sums at specific things than distributed in small amounts to everyone. So he's kind of saying that if you've got a city with a population of, 10,000 people, and you can either build them a library for $1 million or give them each $100, like the city's better off if you build them the library.
Well, it's a leverage point.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you might be able to educate somebody who could then go create more wealth for the town, right? Whereas $100 would probably just be spent on food and alcohol.
Have a little party or something, buy some beer, and then all right, it's gone.
Yep.
Right. And so that's part of the point he's making too against taxes, is that taxes in many ways are like redistributing small amounts to everyone, right? So taking from like the rich and giving out in welfare and stuff to the poor. And he's saying that's less helpful than specific public works that can enrich those neighborhoods that need it.
Yep.
Which is why, we see so many Carnegie libraries and music halls and all that stuff.
And universities.
Because he was so big on that.
Well, which he was very much helped by. So that was another thing in his biography, is like he viewed that as how he became so like how he got to where he got, basically. Is like he was working from like a very early age, but then he'd also always have a book with him. And I think he was like a telegram operator at one point.
Oh, cool.
Which meant there was a lot of waiting. So he would just be reading a ton. And it reminded me of those internships that we both had, which were, office jobs, but we had a lot of time to read. It's kind of similar in that way.
So many books.
Yeah, it's like, it's just like he had a very similar experience with that. So he views libraries or he views books as like a way to move up and change. So I think in the biography, there was a way of putting it where it was like, you get to like converse with all these people who are great people. I think he said great men, right? Who are in these books who you otherwise would never be able to talk to. And so that was his way of sort of getting out of, his physical reality and imagining where he could get to. So I think libraries just held like a special place in his mind.
I think he should support the Made You Think podcast on Patreon. He definitely would.
He would support. I think maybe this is where he could use some of his.
Exactly.
We're inspiring readers.
The Think Fund. Fund. For anyone who doesn't have the time to read, go to Letterbach and just listen to our episode. It's almost as good.
Maybe CMU can.
There we go.
We can make this argument to CMU and be like, Andrew Carnegie would want us to do that. Would want you to do this.
I don't think CMU would sponsor us, considering how much we shit on CMU in the podcast.
I know. I don't think they would.
Although if they don't listen to it, maybe we'd get away with it.
Maybe Carnegie has some descendants.
I'm sure there got to be. I've never heard of a Carnegie family though.
I think he had a daughter, and then I think she probably took her last name.
Oh, and then she probably married.
Yeah,
last name. Yeah.
I forget what that last name was, but there was also some connection to CMU there. Anyway, I'll look it up later.
Yeah, curious now. It's a cool name.
Yeah,
and it seems like maybe it's just rare, right? Like, why don't you see it anymore?
Yeah, it's not like a Smith or something.
Yeah, exactly. So what he's getting to with this discussion of, okay, we should build libraries, not just hand out small sums of money, is kind of his idea for what men of wealth should do. And he says, this then is held to be the duty of the man of wealth. First, to set an example of modest, unostentatious living, shunning display or extravagance. to provide moderately for the legitimate wants of those dependent upon him, and after doing so, to consider all surplus revenues which come to him simply as trust funds, which he is called upon to administer and strictly bound as a matter of duty to administer in the manner which, in his judgment, is best calculated to produce the most beneficial results for the community. The man of wealth thus becoming the mere agent and trustee for his poorer brethren, bringing to their service his superior wisdom, experience, and ability to administer, doing for them better than they would or could do for themselves. And this is, I think, the main thesis.
Yeah.
That if you are wealthy, it is your job to enrich the lives of those less well off than you, because you know better what to do with the money than the government, and you know better what to do with the money than they do.
Right.
Like, you can't just toss money at them and expect that to fix things. You need to figure out ways you can use the money to make their lives better.
Well, and I think the point he made, which in his judgment is best calculated to produce the most beneficial results for the community, it's kind of in imploring the person to find a leverage point.
Yeah.
Like, what is the thing that you could invest in that's going to have the most payoff for the benefit of the community? Is that like whether, and I think in his opinion, that would be like libraries and ways of educating the population. But you know, today you could say that could be, you know, helping people get internet access, or helping them get, you know, phones, or teaching them to
cell towers.
Yeah. Or software skills, or like, you know, it depends what your opinion is on all these different things. It also depends where in the world you're talking about.
Right.
Right. Like, I wouldn't say access to the internet is like that big of a problem in the US, but there are parts of the world where that's a huge problem. There's, like, there's no way to get online. That's changing though. That's changing pretty rapidly.
Well, it'll be cool to see what happens with some of these global internet initiatives, right? So the Facebook planes and the SpaceX satellites.
Yep.
I think the satellites are more promising.
That's like almost the modern day version of the library that Carnegie was going for.
Yeah.
Because the premise is that the internet will enable you to connect with the world, educate yourself. Obviously, if you have the internet, like, you can listen to Made You Think, so you can learn all about these different books.
It's the first thing I would do if I discovered the internet. I'd be like, yo, I've heard about this Made You Think podcast.
Seriously.
Getting on that.
Yeah. It's trickled to word of mouth to the Amazonian tribes. It's like, Made You Think.
We're huge in Brazil.
Exactly. No, but you could access all of MIT's courses.
Yeah.
Or like Stanford's courses. And yeah, the internet is like a portal to the world in the way that at this time, like, books and libraries were. And I still think books have a ton of value, obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this podcast. But in this, you know, I can see why someone would invest in getting people internet access as being like a leverage point.
I wonder how easily someone with just internet access can like learn English.
That's true. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, how good are those tools? I think the Duolingo English learning is pretty good.
Oh, it's supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's free. So
they do certifications for it now. Yeah. And it's free. So those would be interesting stories.
The internet's a double-edged sword, though, now that I just thought about it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fake news.
There's also a lot of distractions.
A lot of distractions.
Whereas a library, you kind of would only, like, I'm sure there are shitty books, right? But it's like harder to find, like, there's no Reddit version of, there's no like library version of Reddit.
You can imagine a story of some like enterprising billionaire drops, you know.
Everybody finds Pornhub.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. Drops like 1,000 cheap tablets into the middle of rural China and comes back in 2 years to see like what progress they've made. And they're all just like hooked on Pornhub and Reddit.
You know, I'm surprised Pornhub hasn't done that as like a marketing stunt.
That would be hilarious. Pornhub internet satellite.
Free idea, Pornhub.
Oh my gosh. Well, porn is something like 40% of all internet traffic.
Yeah.
It's a crazy amount.
Yeah.
And a lot of like internet innovations kind of like
come from porn.
Yeah, streaming video being the most notable one.
I heard certain like ad technologies as well come from the porn industry. Yeah, streaming I think was a big one.
Yeah, streaming video, video timeline highlights, right? So the thing where now on YouTube you can like put your mouse over where in the video you want to go and a little thing pops up that shows you what's happening at that scene. Like that started with porn sites.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure there's other stuff too.
Yeah, that's the secret of Google. That's how they came up with it. They were like, how do we find
They copied the search algorithms from early porn sites.
But anyway, yeah, it's the way I read that sentence is that he's basically asking them to look for a leverage point.
Yeah.
Like what is the thing you can invest in that's going to best benefit the community? And they probably wouldn't be able to do that themselves.
Right. The community, and also, I mean, trusting the community to decide to do it would be a lot. Or so you just kind of got to pop in and do it yourself.
Yeah.
Which I feel like you don't see as much of anymore.
No, you see a lot of it. Like,
do you?
With certain billionaires, they do that. Like, I mean, Gates is probably the best example.
That's fair. Gates does a lot.
That they just do exactly what they think. Like the malaria nets thing.
Right.
Like they've done that kind of single-handedly. I think they've got other people and like organizations involved, but I know it was like it's their money that's really doing it. And then I know that he's doing a lot of stuff around education as well. Right. It's just something he believes in and wants to push. And so it's his money again that he's pushing for it, and
donated that whole building at CMU.
Yeah.
So,
although that may be a pyramid that he's building.
Yeah. Oh. Right. Well, it's a pyramid and a way to recruit.
See, the malaria nets are a little less because it's not like your name on the net.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Well, like the building I always get skeptical of the buildings for the schools. It's like, are you really doing this? Because like...
Well, and also for Gates, it's like putting a building at Carnegie Mellon is also a way to attract programmer talent.
That's true.
Right? Because you're walking around all the time saying like, oh, I'm going to Gates, I'm going to Gates, I'm going to the Gates Center.
Well, and all the CS classes are in there.
All the CS classes are in Gates.
That's not by accident. He didn't want the architecture department named after him.
By the time you graduate, you're just like, oh yeah, Microsoft.
Gates.
Right?
Gates, CS, Gates computer program.
Yeah.
It'd be weird. Like Apple, I get it. For some reason, I puke every time I think of Apple.
Job building. Yeah. Jobs building.
So yeah, there's definitely like, I get why people do it. There is a philanthropic part to it, but
yeah,
I'm not fully convinced it's all philanthropic.
Pyramid building too.
Yeah.
Well, that's like the whole effective altruism idea, right? Is that most really effective altruism is actually not very branded. Like it's hard to, put your name on it. Because stuff like the malaria nets are a big one. Or have you heard of Give Directly?
Mm-mm.
So I think that's the name. And this is considered one of the most effective.
Give Direct. Is it Give Direct? Maybe it's Give Directly. I thought I've heard of something called Give Direct. I think I've heard something like
maybe it's just Give Direct. But it's literally just a site where people in poor communities ask for a certain amount of money to do a certain thing. And then you can donate and it goes straight to them.
Is there any verification of what they're doing with that money? Or
I assume the platform is doing something for it.
Like I can't just say, oh, I'm starting this orphanage in country X and then I get the money and then no one knows what happens to it.
They must have something to account for.
They must have something.
Maybe
I get the point though.
It'd be clever if they did something like if we find out that anyone in your town misused it, then the whole town loses, right? Like
that's a community enforcement then. Yeah. That's a cool concept.
If I were running the business, I'd probably do something like that.
Taleb would agree.
Yeah, it's like skin in the game for the whole community.
Yeah. Self-policing.
But anyway, that's considered one of the most effective altruism things you can do.
Yeah.
It's literally you just like send $100 to a person in Nigeria who's like trying to like get supplies for their shoe shop, right? It's very specific targeted things.
Yeah.
But you can't put your name on any of that.
Exactly.
Like Kiva's the same way. Like Kiva's supposed to be very helpful. And I kind of like Kiva better because it's a little more skin in the game.
Because it's a loan, right?
It's a loan. Yeah. It's a zero interest loan.
Right.
Right. And so and you're like 99% going to get your money back, which, is nice. But to me, it's like if you're asking for money for business stuff, it should be a loan.
Right. It shouldn't be like a grant.
It shouldn't be a grant.
I totally agree with that.
But I mean, both of them are things that it's like you can make a big difference in someone's life with $100.
Right. And to you, that's not that much, but to that person, it could be life-changing.
Or have you heard of Heifer International?
No.
This is a really cool one. It's supposed to be a fairly effective form of altruism too, I think, if I'm remembering right. You can donate animals to poor families.
Oh, I've heard of this. Yeah.
And you can donate an animal as a gift. So my parents will do this sometimes for like family friends and family members who are like just hard to buy gifts for. And so I think they've donated like a llama to a family, a cow to a family, like stuff like that.
That's amazing.
And then you get like, if I remember right, you get a picture of the animal, right? Like here's the happy llama with his new family. And then the family will usually like write you a letter afterwards too. So you get like this nice letter from a family in Peru, like, oh, thank you so much.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's pretty cool. It's like, and then you feel good and it's like making a difference.
And you made like a tangible difference.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a thing that will make their life better.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that makes that type of stuff makes a lot of sense.
I wonder with something like Heifer International if that messes with the local animal market, right? It's like a Tom.
The people who sell llamas.
Yeah, exactly. The people who sell llamas are like fucking charities. Stupid white people in America ruining our economy again.
Yeah, I wonder has somebody, maybe the effective altruism people have talked about this, but like what is the best way to go do that? Like if you were to like, because obviously the Tom's thing causes issues.
Well, I think that's part of why the malaria nets are so effective because that's non-disruptive to any local economy because people just aren't selling them.
And I guess medicine too, in that sense too, like vaccines and stuff. It's not, they just don't have them.
And clean water too.
Yeah.
Because to the extent it is disruptive to the economy, it's disruptive in a good way.
Yeah.
Because it's breaking up like local monopolies and extortion schemes.
Increasing competition too.
Yeah. So that's probably a good consideration. But I would be concerned about giving too many llamas to like one area in Peru, and you just like drive a poor llama herder into poverty and starvation, right? Because he can't sell his llamas anymore. That would suck.
That would suck.
Yeah, that would really suck. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into this now.
I wonder like what people in these other communities think. Like I would love to interview somebody on the other side of the Tom's equation.
Yeah.
And who's just like a cobbler or somebody who just like was fucked over by this company. Even though like the company, like this is the thing. It's like hard to fault the company too, because it's a good idea.
Yeah. Good intentions.
On the surface, on the first order effect. But the second order effect is not good.
No bueno.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like hard to fault them because it's really hard to think of the second order effects.
Yeah. But the second order effect stories are like so funny.
And it was probably working too.
For a while, probably, yeah.
When they were doing the sale. Like, no, even just from a marketing standpoint.
For marketing standpoint.
Yes, they were probably like, oh, this is great. It's working. Like, we're giving all these shoes away. This is amazing. And then like the horror story is starting.
It's like, oh no.
Yeah. What were we saying? It's probably the second order effect.
Well, I was just saying like all those stories about, what was the thing? I think maybe it was in India. They were trying to quell the snake population. So they started offering rewards for bringing in dead snakes.
Oh, I think
so people started breeding snakes. Yeah. And then the population went way up. It was like, oh, shit. Okay.
Smart. People are smart.
Yeah, people are smart. It's like you got to be careful how you incentivize things.
Yep, exactly.
Right? Episode 25-ish, the Charlie Munger one.
Yeah.
All about incentives.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to be careful.
I forget which country it was that tried to do it's not China. Maybe it's China. The one that tried to do like the license plates, like you can only drive on like license plates that end in an even number, drive on a certain day.
Yeah.
And then people just buy like 2 cars or 2 license plates.
Yeah, I remember that
like
one.
It didn't do anything.
No. Oh gosh, there's so many of those.
Someone should write a book about that. Just like these funny second order, like call it like second order follies. Boom.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
Your next book, maybe.
Yeah.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah, that'll be might be a straight to ebook one, but yeah.
You better buy that domain before this episode comes out.
Yeah.
You can start as a blog post. It'd be a good blog post.
I think it'd be a cool blog post.
I'd give it like 10 or 20 claps on Medium.
Yeah. Have you done more Medium posts, by the way? After that really strong.
No, dude, the pressure's too high now.
You're like, no, that's my last one.
Yeah, I don't know how I follow that up.
Sorry.
It still makes like $100 a day. Yeah. Or a week. Sorry, not a day.
Okay, I was like, what?
No, like a week.
I was like, I'm about to do everything on Medium.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm writing an article right now that I think will do very well.
On Medium.
Yeah. It's like a deep dive of all of the psychological things that you believe that aren't actually true or that have failed replication.
Oh, that's a cool idea. I like that.
So it's just like a walkthrough.
The marshmallow test, power posing, Stanford prison experiment, smiling to make yourself happy. One that I heard did get replicated was, or has been replicated several times, which I was worried about, was Inattentional Blindness. Have you seen that one, the gorilla one?
Oh, yeah.
That one was replicated, so I was really happy to see that.
I don't see how that one could not get replicated.
Right.
Yeah. Anyone who's done the test has been like, holy shit.
Yeah, exactly. Like you watch the YouTube video.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I got 15. And then it's like, did you see the
gorilla?
You're like, wait, nope. What?
Yeah. And anybody who says they saw the gorilla is lying.
Well, that's why I was really surprised that the number in the original test, if you read the original paper, it says 50%. Of people didn't see it. And I was like, only 50%?
No, 50% didn't see it and 50% are liars.
Yeah, 50% were like, wait. Yeah, they're probably just like, yeah, I saw the gorilla. That's like, wait, what? Yeah, some people were just like, yeah, I saw it. And I'm like, wait, what gorilla?
The first time I saw it, because it doesn't work after the first time, obviously, was in like a class. And
someone sent it to me the first time.
Oh, see, the thing I liked about seeing it in a class was that nobody saw it, right? Like nobody noticed the gorilla. And so then when they say it at the end, everyone's like, what?
So you could see the real numbers.
Yeah, exactly. You could tell that nobody in there saw it. Or there's probably that one like asshole kid in the back. Yeah, I saw the gorilla. Right? No, you didn't, Johnny. Shut up.
It's weird because if you weren't counting, you probably could see it.
Yeah.
If you were just not paying attention, which was kind of what the whole thing is about.
Right.
That's like when you start paying attention to something, you don't see other things. Yeah, that's like one of my favorite ones. So I was really hoping that did not get like refuted.
Yeah, no, it's not on my list. Yeah. So we're good.
For now. It's like, we're coming for you, psychology.
But it's cool because I actually...
must be a fun article to write. You get to look into all this.
Yeah, because I've got a pretty big list. It's like 20, 25 things now.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But the intro to the article is all about what we talked about last week, with the beginning of Infinity and good science versus bad science.
Yeah.
And how like explanationless science is very hard to hold up to like deeper inquiry. And so a lot of these things are basically explanationless, right? It's like, oh, power posing, increases testosterone and risk taking. It's like, well, why? Right. And then it turns out, okay, it doesn't actually do those things, right? Like Amy Cuddy's research was just wrong.
Yeah. So I guess if you can't answer the why question.
Yeah. Then it's hard to take it as seriously.
Yep.
And then stuff like relativity, right? It gets tested all the time and it holds up, right? Like satellites work.
Yeah.
Right. So relativity is true to a certain extent.
Yep.
So most of this stuff never gets tested like that though.
You know what's still wild though is there is a non-zero percentage of people, hopefully nobody listening to this podcast, who are flat earthers.
Yeah.
Which I can never tell if they're actually being serious.
Yeah. That's the hard thing, is if they like actually believe it or if it's just sort of like a fun community thing.
Is it like a troll thing?
Well, it's like there's a subreddit community. I think it's R Flat Earth.
Okay.
And 90% of the people in there are just goofing around and they think it's funny.
So that's what I'm convinced is like it's mostly people goofing around.
Yeah.
But there's probably people who actually believe it.
I mean, I feel like at least half of it are people who are just trying to trigger liberals because it's so easy and so fun, right? And even I do that sometimes just to fuck with people, right?
Are you a flat earth believer? No, I'm just kidding.
No, but I'll say stuff in groups sometimes if I want to mess with people.
Oh, yeah.
Especially groups where I'm like only kind of friends with people there. We'll say something like, yeah, but like climate change isn't real, right? Like they've done a lot of studies on this. It's not actually a problem.
And then what's the reaction?
The looks on some people's faces, right? But here's the best part is when nobody says anything, they just like quietly ignore it. And then I have to be like, all right, guys, I don't know. It's fun getting people angry. Yeah. It's easier on the internet too.
Oh, it's so easy on the internet. There's no context.
Exactly. No context. People just get angrier than anywhere else because there's no like social cues. So I feel like a big part of flat earthing is just
trolling,
trying to get people riled up. Yeah. But there are probably some people who actually believe it too.
Yeah.
Which is scary.
There was something I saw today, which I was like, I saw it on Twitter, which means you have to believe it's true because it's on Twitter.
Yeah. They fact check stuff before they let you tweet it.
Of course. Yeah.
That's how it works.
It's like a newspaper.
Yeah. Newspapers don't do that either.
It was something like flat earthers deny that Australia is real and claim that everybody who's from there is an actor. But I think it was just like one guy in some forum who said that, and then someone turned it into an article that they knew would get shared and get clicked. So
that's amazing.
And I clicked on it, so I fell for it.
Well, I also love the Antarctic ice wall theory.
Oh, what's that?
That Antarctica is actually just a giant wall of ice that wraps around the circle of the world, and that's what prevents anything from like falling off the edge.
Oh my god!
Yeah, that's a real idea people have in their heads.
We should do a conspiracy theory episode.
Oh, that'd be fun.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Next time we don't want to read a book, that'd be a good one to do.
Well, I wonder if we could find a good book of conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Like, so here would be the cool way to do it too, is to find one that makes very, very compelling cases.
Yeah, the strongman argument.
Yeah, like strongman arguments for certain conspiracy theories. Or like we were talking about the Sphinx thing last week.
We should tweet that out and see if anybody has suggestions.
Yeah, if anyone has a good book. That'd be fun. I'd like to read that book.
Yeah.
I know that I would come out of it believing at least half of them.
Yeah.
Too. Or at least being curious. Yeah. Right?
Well, because we fall for a lot of stuff. Like fall for or believe in the true theory of like aquatic apes.
Yeah.
That Sphinx thing you told me last week.
That's the thing, is I'm not saying these things are true.
No, but they're fun.
I'm saying they are interesting to entertain.
Yes.
Right? Like, and I don't know the truth. Right? So, hey.
Like the Sphinx thing you told me about on the last episode.
That's an interesting idea.
I still need to find that episode.
Yeah, I'll try to find it, send it to you.
Yeah, that's like interesting. It's like, even if there's like a 1% chance that that's true.
Yeah.
That's like a holy shit
super cool
type of, I'd be disappointed if it's not true, actually.
I know, I would be too.
Same thing with aquatic apes.
Well, because we keep finding older and older human remnants in North America.
It's totally believable.
So it's like, all right, there's obviously a lot of human history that we just don't know about.
Right. Well, also, I mean, you even have to think about those people got to North America.
Yeah. And we're talking like 13,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and they did not develop here. Like they got here somehow.
Another one I want to read about is, and I don't know if there is a good book on this. I'm sure there is. I just don't know about it. Like the history of like the Polynesian islands. Because that is like mind boggling. I read a book, which is not one we should do on the podcast because it wasn't like well written or that interesting. Well, the concept was really interesting, but it wasn't a good book. But it was about like the speculations on like intergalactic travel, space travel. And the analogy they kept going back to is the Polynesian islands. Because it was kind of similar. It was like you will basically be cut off because of this, how the vast the distances are. going from like the Milky Way to the nearest galaxy, it was just like, there is no technology we know of that could do that communication in any kind of reasonable time. So effectively you're gone.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas like going to Mars is like, yeah, the communication is not instant, but you can still communicate with Earth.
Right.
It's just, it's off by, is it
5 minutes?
5 minutes. Yeah.
Like
it's not that bad.
Right. You can send emails. You can text.
Yeah. It's like totally fine. So you're not like gone forever from those people. Whereas if you're going to another galaxy, like you are gone. So they were talking, they went into some of the history of the Polynesian islands of like when people would go from, you know, somewhere to like Hawaii, right? You're like not going to see those people ever again.
Yeah.
And there's no way to communicate with them. Like you were on your own basically. So that was the analogy they were giving, is like, this is like the second time in human history where, you know, you were probably doing maybe more than second time, but the first time really since then that we're doing this sort of like for sure one-way trip. Like, well, we're not doing it yet, but that's
getting there.
Yeah. So it was a cool concept, which is why I bought the book and read it. But it was like a series of essays of speculation on how that would work, like the logistics of it, like how would the fuel source be. I mean, cool concept. It just wasn't well written. It was hard to go through.
Which book was it in, or did I listen, or did I hear this somewhere else? The amount of energy and resources it would take to actually create like an intergalactic generational ship would basically use up like most of the solar system.
Oh, I don't think we talked about that.
Okay. I don't know where I was listening to this. It was like some back of the napkin math just on the amount of energy it would take to get there. And obviously it's based off of current methods and all of that. But it was basically saying you would need an economy on every stable-ish planet, right, in order to like fund enough development for it.
Oh, wow.
And you would need resources from some like huge amount of the like usable, like metal-ish type resources.
So we like for sure couldn't do it today.
Yeah, like we would need to have colonies on Mars and like Jupiter moons and stuff like that, and have them all kind of like working together to build an intergalactic ship. So I don't remember exactly why, but I guess it has to be so big that it can support multiple generations of humans, right?
And be self-contained.
And be sustainable for, 100+ years.
Jeez, yeah. So you'd have to have like food, like a way to grow food.
You'd have to have animals. Right? You'd have to have fields.
Waste management.
Yeah, waste management's easy.
Yeah.
But
that's true. No, but you might want to use that as like fertilizer in some
you'd have
way.
To water generation.
Yeah.
Right. Not to mention like just how do you handle like elements, right? Because I'm just thinking like having enough air, right?
Oh, right.
So you need plants to help you circulate oxygen, but then you also need a way to recycle water. And recycling is not 100% efficient. So you're going to have some degradation.
And so I guess it would need enough starting material to last.
But there's no way to get more material although you could probably stop it. Actually, no, if you're going in between galaxies, there's nothing in between.
There's not even like comets and stuff, right?
There might be the occasional one, but the odds of coming across would be infinitesimal. So,
because comets have ice, but that's it.
Yeah, once you leave, you're on it probably for like 100+ years. And how fast you can go.
And that's what boggles my mind about like the Polynesian explorers too, is like they have to carry all the food with them and fresh water and stuff too, because like there's no desalination like thing. I mean, I know you're on water, but you can't drink the ocean water.
Right.
So like just the logistics of it are kind of mind boggling too.
Yeah.
And apparently the boats were like not that.
Yeah, they're like canoes.
Yeah. So
pretty impressive.
Yeah, if there's a book about that, I'd love, if somebody has a recommendation, I would love to learn more about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're way off topic.
But we got to the main premise.
Yes.
Right. So basically what he's saying is that the goal, or what somebody with a lot of wealth should be using their money to enrich the lives of other people who, don't have access to that kind of wealth, and in a meaningful way that they can enrich their own lives. Right. This is the main thing that he says, is that in bestowing charity, the main consideration should be to help those who will help themselves, to provide part of the means by which those who desire to improve may do so, to give those who desire to use the aids by which they may rise, to assist, but rarely or never to do all. Right. So don't just like pick them up and put them in a better state, but give them the ability to do it themselves.
Right.
Right.
Well, it goes back to like the give a man a fish or teach a man to fish thing.
Exactly. So you give them a library, and then the people who are motivated will use that to better their lives. The people who aren't won't.
Yep.
And that's sort of up to them to decide what life they want from it.
Yeah. So it's like you're giving them the means to do it. And then if they do it or not is their choice.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think he's also an optimist in that sense, where he thinks there will be people who will take advantage of it, and then they'll generate wealth on their own. So it's the most efficient way as well of giving, because you're doing the most good for society, because then ideally those people would do the same thing.
Get a compounding effect.
Yeah, exactly. Which I'm sure he was very familiar with the compounding effect.
Oh, yeah.
Just being a businessman.
Being a businessman in an era with no income tax,
Right.
where you just have like infinite massive returns on capital.
Yep.
And I think he makes a good point here where he says that neither the individual nor the race is improved by almsgiving. Those worthy of assistance, except in rare cases, seldom require assistance.
Yep.
So the people who kind of like need to be propped up, you shouldn't be giving money to anyway, because they're probably not going to use it effectively to improve everyone else's condition. And the people who will use that money to improve everyone else's condition don't need you to give it to them.
That's like a Darwinian assessment of the situation.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it's survival. Like the people who need your help are not weren't going to pull themselves up anyway.
Right.
It's kind of like what he's saying here. Or rarely would have done anything on their own.
Yeah. I think the question then, and we'll get more to this next week, is, what is the adequate level of support for the people who, in Carnegie's words, won't help themselves?
Right.
Right. And I don't know, it's a tough question.
Yeah.
We'll have to explore it
We'll
more
explore that
next week.
next week for sure.
Ooh, this is like a series.
I know.
Yeah. It's like, tune in next week to find out.
We're turning into one of those.
Should we let poor people starve in the streets? Neil.
That's our soundbite.
Neil says yes.
Yeah.
Nat says no.
Nat just wants to eat them. Nat the cannibal here.
Nat the cannibal.
I think that came up as early as Emergency.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because you're saying if you were in a situation where you're going to starve or eat someone, would you eat someone? It's like, yeah, of course I would eat someone. Like, I'm not going to pretend to be this saintly person who would never eat another human. Like, if I'm going to die if I don't eat someone, yeah, I'm going to eat someone. It's not a hard question. Anyone who says they wouldn't eat someone is a liar.
They're lying to you, I guess. Yeah. Aw.
It's true.
Why he wouldn't? He wouldn't.
Kosa and I got into a small spat about this once, where she asked if she died, if we were like stranded on an island together, would I eat her? And I said yes.
Okay. Wait, is that bad?
Yeah, let's see what it's bad.
Wouldn't you want to be useful?
You don't want me to starve to death, do you?
She does.
She does. Okay.
Okay, that answers it.
All right. Well, there we go.
Wait, why wouldn't you eat Nat? But you're stranded on an island.
Home.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I still.
You're gonna let the bacteria eat it.
I think if you hadn't eaten in 40 days and you were starving, I think my big meaty calf muscles would start to look real tasty. Anyway,
well, I think one thing in this section that, of course, is like the caveat, right? Is I think which episode did we cover this on? I think the Kanye West episode.
Okay,
right? Of like, in certain cases, the game is somewhat rigged, or you just haven't seen a better example. Like if you grow up, and we were talking about in, I think, even the gun control episode, like some of these neighborhoods, which are, there's just no positive examples for you. It's hard to know who's worthy of assistance or not, because some people maybe just with the right example would be, which is where I think libraries or that type of idea makes a lot of sense, because you're showing people these positive examples, and maybe the people who will strive will see those and want to strive, or at least see a path out of their situation. Which is, Kanye said something similar, on the album. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to know where the line is, right? Because like in some ways, I'll save some of this for next week.
Yeah, we'll save some for next week. Yeah. So tune in next week for further discussion.
Yeah, but it was a cool line that he put in there that was, gives you a lot to think about. And then he gives some names of other people who have done, I think, what he's advocating for here. Yeah. The name Stanford was in there.
Yeah, I saw that, which is cool.
Yeah. I heard that, and I could be completely wrong here. Mm-hmm. I heard from a friend that Stanford, the founding history of it was founded by, I think this guy, Senator Stanford, and his wife, because their son didn't get into an Ivy League school or something.
That's amazing.
There was something.
I hope that's true.
I hope that's true. Actually, you know what? I'm going to Google this right now.
Yeah. Well, we got to wrap up.
Yeah.
Well, tune in next week to find out if that's what happened with Senator Stanford.
I'm just trying to see if there's anything else in here. Well, there was the whole, if you die rich, you die disgraced.
Yeah, I like that line. It's a good one to wrap up on, which is just that the man who dies thus rich dies disgraced. Right? You want to use all of your money in your life to enrich your society and community. Yeah. And if you don't, then you're a failure and you shouldn't have earned all that money in the first place.
Yeah. Well, because he said it's like a trust fund that you're entrusted to
use on betterment of society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was fun.
That was a good one. I'm glad we finally
did it. Very tangent-y episode.
Yeah, super tangent-y, which I kind of like about the article ones, because we've got more freedom for tangents. We're not as rushed to get through 800 pages of computer science stuff. But yeah, So if you enjoyed this episode, definitely check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/madeyouthink, or you can just Google Patreon Made You Think. You'll find us.
Good way to use your wealth.
Exactly. Great way to use your wealth to support the betterment of others.
Because people listen to this and they learn, they get inspired to read.
And I mean, the basic pledge on Patreon is just $5 a month.
Yeah.
So that gets you access to discussions for these episodes, the book notes, show notes, what is coming up, any bonus material that we record before and after the episode. And that's like $1.25 per episode.
Right.
Which is not a very big commitment.
Yeah.
We're doing 4 episodes a month. So if you think that this is worth like a Starbucks coffee a month, then we would love it if you hopped over to Patreon and supported the show.
Well, and I think the main reason we're doing that is we even decided to do the Patreon is it gives us a lot of freedom to basically have creative control over how the episodes go. I think, if you listen to the show, you know how cognizant we are of incentives. And when you have, having advertisers, of course, changes how you would structure your show, what we would talk about, the kinds of things we'd want to, how controversial we'd want to get. Whereas if it's Patreon, it's just you guys. You guys are the people we answer to.
Yeah, we can say whatever we want.
Yeah,
it's great.
Unless you guys punish us for that.
Yeah, well, it's possible.
Yeah,
but
I don't think they will. No, our audience is not it's not a easily triggered audience.
No, I hope
otherwise
not.
They wouldn't be listening.
Yeah, they would
not be this far. Yeah.
They wouldn't have gotten to the discussion of eating each other.
Yes, exactly. So our audience has a strong intestinal fortitude.
They do, yes. It's almost dinner time, actually. Getting hungry. But other ways you can support the show, leave us a review on iTunes or wherever your local podcasts are sold. That just helps more people find the show, helps us show up in recommended podcast results. If we're trying to get guests on in the future, it makes us, look more legit to them.
Yep.
So definitely do that if you have a second and you haven't yet.
Tell your friends.
Tell your coworkers, tell your blog, email, newsletter subscribers, tell your Twitter followers, tell your Grindr matches.
Yes.
It's a great opening line,
It
actually.
is. It's like, have you heard this episode?
Yeah, have you listened to this episode on Made You Think?
About eating people?
Oh, baby. Get my juices going.
No, but seriously, telling other people, that's like the best way the podcast has grown, I think, is just word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
You guys telling other people, and we can only shout about it so much.
Exactly.
My Twitter feed has this logo enough on it.
Yeah, it's mostly just tweets about Made You Think and beer.
Exactly. That's basically what it is at this point.
That's all Neil does is drink beer and talk about books.
I sometimes have to throw other tweets in there just to break it up. I'm like, I haven't tweeted this week's episode, the recap episode that came out.
Oh, yeah.
I partially cognizantly did that because on Tuesday when the episode came out, I looked at my feed and I'm like, the last 7 tweets I've had are Made You Think related. I really need to change it up for a couple days. So I'm going to post that tweet tomorrow.
All right.
With the
breaks up the downloads a bit.
Exactly. So we get to even it out a little bit.
Exactly.
But yeah, tell people.
Yeah, tell people about it.
Tweet at us.
Yeah, tweet at us.
We love hearing from you guys.
I'm at Nat Eliason.
I'm at The Real Neil S. Book recommendations, what you think about the show.
Feedback.
Yep.
And you can always also go to madeyouThinkpodcast.com/support. We've got some show supporting sponsors there that'll give you discounts. They give us a little kickback if you check them out.
Yep. And we use all the products.
We're frequently enjoying them during the episodes.
Yep.
So they're all legit endorsements. And you can also buy anything off of Amazon from there, and we'll get a 4 to 5% cut of that. So it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah, and you can help distribute Jeff Bezos as well.
Exactly.
By doing that.
Because he, for some reason, is not supporting the show yet.
Right.
So this is a way for you to do it for him. Very helpful.
Yeah. This is a way to take control into your own hands.
Exactly. So cool. We will see you all next week where we will continue some of the themes that we discussed today.
Yep. And join Patreon if you want to know what that episode is ahead of time.
So you can read the book before then.
Yep.
Cheers, everyone.
See you next time.